The Oregon Short Line Railroad was a railroad in the U.S. states of Wyoming, Idaho, Utah, Montana and Oregon. The line was organized as the Oregon Short Line Railway in 1881 as a subsidiary of the Union Pacific Railway. The Union Pacific intended the line to be the shortest route from Wyoming to Oregon. In 1889 the line merged with the Utah and AMP Northern Railway and a handful of smaller railroads to become the Oregon Short Line and Utah Northern Railway. Following the bankruptcy of Union Pacific, the line was taken into receivership and reorganized as the Oregon Short Line Railroad. Oregon Short Line Railway. The Oregon Short Line Railway was organized on April 14, 1881. The line started from the Union Pacific Main Line in Granger, Wyoming, and reached Montpelier, Idaho, on August 5, 1882, and then to McCammon, Idaho, in the fall of 1882. Between McCammon and Pocatello the line was shared with fellow Union Pacific subsidiary Utah and AMP Northern's grade by adding a third rail to the 3 feet narrow gauge track to accommodate the 4 feet 8.5 in standard gauge cars. The line from Pocatello to Huntington, Oregon, was completed in late 1884. Access to Portland, Oregon, was on track leased from the Oregon Railway and Navigation Company. The line was essential because the Union Pacific Main Line ended in Utah where it met the Central Pacific Railroad, which by that time was part of the Southern Pacific Railroad. The Southern Pacific had built tracks as far east as El Paso, Texas, and would in 1883 become a transcontinental railroad in its own right. The Southern Pacific then started routing traffic to the Southern Line, cutting off the Union Pacific, which needed other access to the Pacific coast. The Oregon Short Line also was meant to halt the OR and AMP ends continued eastward expansion at the Idaho-Oregon border. Oregon Short Line and Utah Northern Railway. In 1889, the Oregon Short Line Railway merged with Utah and AMP Northern Railway and 6 other smaller railroads to form the Oregon Short Line and Utah Northern Railway. In 1890 the company finished converting the original Utah and AMP Northern Line from 3 feet narrow gauge to 4 feet 8.5 in standard gauge, a process that U and AMP-N had started as early as 1885. On October 13, 1893 the OSL and AMP-UN went into receivership with the rest of the Union Pacific holdings. The Oregon Short Line Railroad was incorporated in February 1897 and purchased the property of the OSL and AMP-UN later that month. On March 15 the OSL took possession of the line and started operating. The OSL was independent for a short period of time until October 1898 when the newly reformed Union Pacific Railroad took control of a majority of the board of directors. During the early part of the 20th century the railroad publicized tours of Yellowstone National Park by way of a spur constructed from Idaho Falls, Idaho to West Yellowstone, Montana. In 1938, Union Pacific began consolidating operations and leased for operation a number of its subsidiaries including the Oregon Short Line. The railroad operated under the lease until December 30, 1987, when the OSL was fully merged into the Union Pacific Railroad.